All right, so you've handed us quite the reading list for this deep dive, with all these excerpts from Holistic EMF Protection Made Easy.
You're really diving deep into this whole world of EMF radiation.
Yeah.
And you've got a whole team of EMF specialists weighing in on this book.
Right.
So clearly this is something you're serious about understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And who could blame you? I mean, it's invisible. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it might actually be impacting our health.
It's true.
So that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Yeah.
How do we make our homes healthier when it comes to this invisible force?
That's the question, isn't it? It's so interesting how many people are starting to ask that very question these days.
Right.
And EMF stands for electromagnetic field.
Okay.
Basically, it's energy traveling in waves. And we are practically swimming in it these days.
Yeah.
What I think is so interesting about this book in particular is that it doesn't just explain the science behind it. It actually gives you really actionable steps to take control.
So let's back up for a second, because
Yeah.
we throw around EMF like it's this household term.
Right.
Like it's something everybody should just automatically know.
But what exactly are electromagnetic fields?
Yeah. So in the simplest terms, they're invisible areas of energy
Okay.
created by the use of electricity.
So anything electrical, anything that has a battery is giving off EMF radiation.
Gotcha.
And these fields are everywhere. They're in our homes. They're in our workplaces. They're outdoors.
So we're talking cell phones.
Wi-Fi, microwaves.
Exactly.
That kind of thing.
That's your microwave or radio frequency radiation, also known as RF.
Okay.
But then there's another type.
Which is low frequency electric and magnetic fields.
Okay.
And that comes from things like the wiring in our walls.
Our appliances, even those big power lines that we see
Oh, right.
on the streets.
Okay.
Those are all.
I love EMFs. So 2 types of EMF, both invisible, both all around us.
Correct.
Why should we even care?
Is this stuff actually harmful?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is where I think it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The book mentions that our exposure to just RF radiation alone is a quintillion times higher
Than natural levels.
Wow.
To put that into perspective,
A quintillion.
imagine a stack of dollar bills
Okay.
that could reach to the sun and back, and then multiply that stack.
By another billion.
Wow.
That's how much our exposure has increased.
That's almost impossible to imagine.
It's mind-boggling.
What does that kind of exposure even do to our bodies?
Right, and that's the thing. It's like we don't even know.
Yeah.
The book compares it to...
You know, the dangers of secondhand smoke.
Right.
Something that, we didn't fully understand the risks of for decades.
Yeah.
And there's growing concern that this dramatic increase in EMF exposure
Could be linked to various health issues.
like
What kind of health issues? Give me the rundown.
well, some are more immediate and noticeable,
Okay.
like those headaches or sleep disruptions you mentioned.
Mhm.
The book even talks about how some people experience heart palpitations.
Or ringing in the ears when they're exposed to high levels of EMF.
So it can really have that kind of immediate impact.
They certainly seem to think so, and they back it up with quite a bit of research.
But then there are the longer term concerns,
Okay.
like, potential impacts on our cognitive function, our memory, even links to certain types of cancers.
Okay. Now that has my attention.
Cancer's no joke.
Right.
Are they saying EMF radiation definitely causes cancer?
Well, it's important to point out that the research is still developing in this area.
However, there have been studies that suggest
Um,
possible link
between long-term EMF exposure.
and certain types of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And the authors of Holistic EMF Protection Made Easy are clearly advocating for more research to be done in this area.
Right.
And they actually use the example of those French courts.
That shut down 4G antennas because they were impacting cows.
Why, seriously? Cows?
It sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it shows that this issue goes beyond just us.
Right.
It affects all living things.
Okay, I'm starting to get a little freaked out here.
So let's talk about our homes.
Okay.
If we're thinking about reducing our exposure to EMF.
Where do we even begin?
Right.
What are some of the biggest culprits lurking in our own houses?
Well, let's take a little tour
Okay.
through a typical home, shall we?
We'll start in the bedroom.
Okay.
Often considered a sanctuary.
But you might be surprised at what's lurking behind those walls.
Okay. You've got my attention.
Think about it. Smart meters often attach to exterior walls.
Electric blankets, even some mattresses themselves can emit EMFs.
Really? Mattresses?
Yeah.
I never would have thought of that.
And we spend a significant portion of our lives in our bedrooms.
Right.
Often sleeping right next to these sources.
Yeah, it's like a stealth attack while we sleep.
Right.
Okay, that's a little unsettling.
What about the kitchen?
I mean, it's practically appliance central in there.
Oh, you're telling me.
Microwave ovens are an obvious one.
They use high levels of RF radiation to heat our food.
Right.
But there's also refrigerators, those new induction cooktops.
Even some blenders that use powerful motors that can generate EMFs.
The book even mentions something called dirty electricity.
Oh, okay.
Dirty electricity. Now that just sounds creepy.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
What is that exactly?
So imagine your electrical current as this smooth flowing river.
Okay.
Dirty electricity is like having all these little rapids and eddies.
In that river caused by the way modern electronics process energy.
It's these disruptions in the electrical current
that can then radiate out into our living spaces,
adding to the overall EMF soup that we're exposed to.
So it's like our wiring is throwing off little invisible sparks everywhere.
Pretty much.
Yikes. What can we do about that?
We'll get to solutions in a bit.
Okay.
Don't worry. But first, let's finish our tour.
Okay.
Living areas are another hotspot.
We've got our beloved Wi-Fi routers, smart TVs, gaming consoles,
right,
all emitting RF radiation.
And I bet you're going to tell me about those hidden cell phone towers disguised as trees now, right?
You caught me.
But seriously, those are a real thing, and they're more common than you might think.
They can be disguised as pretty much anything.
Even tucked away in those innocent-looking utility boxes.
Okay, I'm officially creeped out now.
But that's why we're doing this deep dive, right?
Right.
To get informed.
Yeah, and figure out what we can do about it.
So spill the beans. What are some practical steps we can take to minimize our EMF exposure starting today?
Well, the good news is you don't have to become a hermit and live off the grid to make a difference.
Okay.
Even small changes can make a big impact.
Small changes, big impact.
I like the sound of that.
Right.
So give it to me straight.
Okay.
What can we start doing today?
One of the simplest things is something you can do right now.
Unplug devices when you're not using them.
Okay.
Sounds almost too easy, right?
But even when they're turned off,
yeah,
many devices still emit low-level EMFs.
Okay, I'll admit I am totally guilty of leaving everything plugged in all the time.
Most of us are.
But think about it this way.
Unplugging is like giving your body a break.
From that constant low-level exposure?
It's like turning down the background noise so your system can rest and recharge.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, so unplugging is step one.
What else?
Next, try using speakerphone or headphones for calls to keep your phone away from your head.
Right.
And if you can hardwire your computer to the internet instead of using Wi-Fi.
That's a big win.
I actually made the switch to a wired keyboard and mouse after reading about this in the book.
I love that.
It felt a little weird at first going old school like that.
Right.
But I have to say, I feel better knowing I'm reducing my exposure at least a little bit.
Every little bit helps, right?
Right.
Now, are you ready for some next level stuff?
Hit me with your best shot.
The book goes into some really fascinating detail about shielding materials.
We're talking shielding, paint mesh, and fabrics that can actually block
or deflect EMF radiation.
Okay, that sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie. Is that stuff actually effective?
It can be, especially for people who are particularly sensitive to EMFs.
The book also mentions automatic cutoff switches for circuits in your bedroom.
Okay.
These switches essentially eliminate electrical fields in the room while you sleep.
So you literally just flip a switch and your bedroom becomes an EMF-free zone.
Pretty much.
That's pretty amazing. Okay, let's say I'm ready to go all in on this.
Okay.
What if I'm considering a new home or some major renovations?
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give for minimizing EMF exposure right from the start?
That's where the concept of radiation-free building comes in.
It's like going green, but for electromagnetic radiation.
Okay.
It all starts with choosing the right location.
So avoiding those power lines like they're carrying the zombie virus, right?
Exactly.
And being mindful of cell tower proximity, too.
Right.
But it goes beyond just location.
Okay.
During the design phase of a new home, you can actually plan for low EMF living.
Think about things like locating bedrooms as far away from electrical panels as possible.
And incorporating shielding materials during the construction process.
So it's about making smarter choices from the ground up.
Absolutely.
And what I appreciate about this book is that it doesn't just throw a bunch of scary information at you.
It empowers you to take control of your environment and make informed decisions about your health.
You know, after this deep dive, I'm realizing how little I considered this invisible world of EMFs before.
Yeah.
And the fact that it impacts everything living.
It's true.
Humans, animals, even plants.
That's a powerful realization.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we're just starting to understand this invisible force that we've introduced into the world.
And this book, Holistic EMF Protection Made Easy, is a great place to start.
It really is. So listeners, it's time to take back control. We encourage you to check out the book for yourselves.
There's a ton of fascinating information in there, and it's presented in a way that's easy to understand and apply to your own life.
And remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
That's right. So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay healthy.